When the earthquake occurred, chunks of plaster anywhere from this size to, in some cases, larger, from different areas in the ceiling fell. And the station was closed long enough to make an assessment and determine where the problems were. But the single biggest problem that concerned us, rather than just simply making spot repairs, was that when you look up at the ceiling where the octagonal coffers are located, you see the decorative eggs and darts that surround each of those coffers. The ones that are in the corner are called acanthus leaves, and they're about the size of a softball. One of them came loose and dropped 96 feet and bounced on the floor. And it could have been a really bad day for somebody, but it came loose at random as a result of the earthquake. And so that our charge became, we had to inspect everything. And to do that, we had to have the entire main hall scaffolded. This station moves 100,000 people a day, and we couldn't obstruct the flow of people, so we couldn't drop anything like plaster dust or anything like that onto them, nor could we allow anything to fall. That's what we did. When we assembled the rig, we rolled basically from bay to bay over a period of 2.5 years. That's a historic landmark, and our charge was that this, when we were finished, it had to look exactly as it looked the day before the earthquake. We did not strip any paint except the paint that was loose. We did fully repaint and we fully regilded. So all the gold that you see is brand new. So the gold that's on there now is intended to last for the next 75 years. Basically, they created a giant truss, and it spans the 120 feet width of the station, and it rides on rails so that it could ride from bay 1 and slide from 1 to 2. And then we put the fixed scaffold on top of that enabled the guys to be able to get up tight to every single piece of the plaster. The gilders had to be able to be, within inches of the surface of the coffers. Once this was completely erected, we put vertical containment in place so that any dust that we were generating would stay internal to the whole rig. Basically, this gives you a sense of what we encountered. The building is a steel frame. These are the original steel runners to the building. Every one of these goes from the spring line up to top dead center, and they're supported by the purlin trusses that run east-west. But there was no direct connection between the runners and the coffers. So the coffers, which were hung by a series of plaster wads as part of the original construction, they were like things hanging from a pendulum. And so what you have are thousands of wads. And basically what the wads are is rolled up burlap, dipped in the plaster. We had to come up with a solution that was not the same as these wads because we were charged with a 100-year solution. The wads were not a 100-year solution. What we did was we created a steel, what looks like a tic-tac-toe board, a steel framework that supports the back side of each of the coffers. What we created are a series of steel ties that link the coffers together in an east-west direction. We also use that steel to provide the reinforcement for the panels in between. And our charge was to make it so that it would be capable of withstanding another 5.8 magnitude quake, which it will.
Michael DeSarga with Lorton Stone. We have about 8,000 square feet of granite that's out here. So all the triangular pavers out here, the goal here was the same as these pavers. They're all the same exact size pavers. Nothing was field cut around the perimeter. All the layout was done so it would all fit. And the big goal here was all alignment. So as you walk out, you'll see all the joints at the corners are all dead on with the paver joints. And when you look across the whole terrace, you'll see the joints lined from one point all the way to the other point at the entry. So everything is dead on through the whole thing. There's very little variation in any of the joints. And we have 500 of these custom precast pedestals made of varying heights that are laid out through here. And so the stones, the majority of this pattern is all set on these pedestals. So it's all open joints. Part of the biggest challenge out here was not just setting stone, we do that all the time, but it was getting the layout dead on and getting everything perfect. And that's what we did out here.
At the pedestals, you got like open joints, and then there you grouted them.
Actually, these are all caulk joints, and we have them all, if you measure them all, they're almost all identical on the length of each way. But you have the pedestal right underneath there, and underneath there you have the mortar bed that it's sitting on right there in the corner. And if I'm not mistaken, the goal was to try and disguise that some, and also too want to keep the water drain away from that point. On all these pedestals, all have little drain cuts on each one, but each one of these joints are dead on with those drain cuts in the pedestals. The granite is Lac du Bonnet granite. It's from Minnesota, from Cold Spring Granite fabricated it. And if you look at the materials, generally you'll find some black inclusions that run through it. But when you look through this job, we work with the fabricator to cull all that out, and we work with them to keep a very tight range. Actually, we didn't field fabricate anything.
There were none.
Nothing. You walk this way, and I'll notice on the benches, all the supports, I had all those bench supports engineered. And when you walk by, you'll see that all the bench supports are dead on with the joint line in the paver also. And that was, all Jose's watching the work and getting it installed right. This job is just loaded with details, even the details around the cutouts for the lighting. We went back and forth on that. We did samples of that, how to make that look right, and with the corners inside the cutouts and all for the openings for those too. It looks simple, but this is quite a job. If we had a custom-made plate made under here that the architect had started with, then we had to work it out. But this whole piece of stone has a stainless steel plate underneath that matches almost the size of the paver, so that they could pull it up. You could see the joints lining up all the planers. Then we had the granite that went down these stairs too, and there's heating on the heating mat or mesh underneath these steps also. And we try to pay attention to every detail, because it's the little things on a job like this that just kill you later. When you get everybody on the right line, you get the right people working, you can do a really good job.
My name is Chuck Mills, General Superintendent, Custom Glass Services out of Frederick, Maryland. And we're here getting ready to walk the Museum of the Bible project on 300 D Street that we've been working with Clark Construction for approximately the past 10 months.
I'm Adam Bird, Project Manager with Clark Construction, here to tell you guys about the galley glass feature we have here at the Museum of the Bible. It's a steel, architecturally exposed structural steel members with intumescent paint on it. So that's the main structural support for the glass. It actually spans about 45 feet up. We call them the ribs, the vertical steel ribs. And that actually it's a support system for the 6th floor, as well as for the aluminum and then the IGU glass system.
There's 439 pieces of glass on the job, averaging 660 pounds a piece. It's all German glass. It's 1 9/16 inches thick with a stainless steel spacer between the thermal break of the glass that everything's actually set with toggles and compressed in. There's between 60 to 90 per piece of glass, depending on the size of the glass. We have 225,000 pounds of steel and about 275,000 pounds of glass just on this galley. This is really this portion of the building to me is kind of it's very ominous to stand under this amount of glass.
Especially with the temp clips up there.
Well, no, it has the toggles in it. It has the toggles. Because of the logistics of having a crane in the street, we were only allowed to have one. Well, when we brought these pieces of steel in, as you see, the purlins are what tie it back to the building. So we couldn't exactly leave the steel just hanging here on its own. So we got with Roshman's engineers, and we actually used 3-ton chain falls and pulled back on it so that we could release the crane, bring the purlins up, and make the connections. We also have the channel glass that actually spans about 3/4 of the way around the building. It goes about 338 feet across the south side of the building, covers the west side of the building, and comes all the way across the north and wraps the east end by about 20 feet. It's been an interesting project, very complex. It's a very tight job site. There's a lot of men in a small space around here, and it's been quite the challenge to get something so large in such a small area.